It's really interesting to look at how the Bible defines relationships, like between a man and his wife, a group of parents and their children, a servant and a master. Exodus 21 has some really interesting insights to share with us. Let me read to you from Exodus 21 and verse 2 and then 5 and 6. In verse 2, it says, "If you buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go free for nothing." It was very common for Hebrew families to buy a servant. These were not slaves in the sense that we think of them in America. These were people that were paid to do work. They had perhaps menial tasks as servants, but they had their freedom. And that's expressed right here. The person who is purchased as a servant, a doulos in the Greek, would serve 6 years. At the end of 6 years, he could go to the master and say, "I would like to leave." And the master would have to let him go. But notice verses 5 and 6. "And if the servant shall plainly say, 'I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free,' then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever." This is a very interesting concept that's presented here. I'm a servant. I've served 6 years, the 7th year is coming up, and I have a right to leave. But if I went to the master and said, "Master, you have taken good care of me, my wife and my children. I don't want to leave. I love you. I love the family. I love being part of your organization here. I don't want to leave." If that were the case, the master would first take him to the judges, who are probably the elders of the city in which he resided or the area in which he resided, and he would share that with them. And then he would take that servant to a doorpost, then take an awl, which is like an ice pick, and bore a hole through, not the ear, but through the hanging down part of the ear, I'm sure, not into the hearing organ itself. Bore that hole right through that hanging down portion. Now that person would be marked with that awl hole, but he would be staying with his master forever if he wished to do it. He was free to go, but he was free to stay. So this is kind of interesting. So what does the boring through of the ear have to do with anything? Well, let's go to Psalm chapter 40. I think it's making a powerful statement about our Lord Jesus Christ. Because in Psalm 40, we have some verses that are very messianic. These verses could have applications directly to the context, but they also refer to Christ himself. Let me just read one verse. This is verse 6 of Psalm 40. "Sacrifice and offering thou did not desire. Mine ears you have opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then said I, Lo, I come, in the volume of the book is written of me. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, your law is within my heart." Those words apply directly to Messiah. They apply directly to Jesus Christ. So why is he mentioning about himself as the Messiah that his ear has been bored through? He's saying, I know you're not as interested in outward forms of worship like the burnt offerings or sin offerings or so on, but what you really are interested in is not religious practice. You're interested in whether I have an ear to hear. Isn't it interesting? The master bores through the ear of the servant. And just who was Jesus? Well, he was many things, but he was certainly a servant. He did not come to be served. He said, I have come to serve. And if we take this in the context of his relationship with his Father, in a sense what he's saying is, Father, I know I'm co-eternal, co-equal, co-substantial with you, but I am willing to take the place of a sacrifice. I will do the job of sacrificing myself for human beings. Because of their sin, I will become responsible, and I will take the wrath of God so they can be free. Now, he's also a man, isn't he? Jesus is both God and man. What's really interesting here is Jesus is saying, I didn't come to do my will, but the will of my Father who sent me. In other words, that boring of the ear is kind of illustrative of Christ, who's saying, yeah, I've got my own will. Actually, I'm the second person of the Godhead. I have a strong will. But I am willing to put that aside and become a servant to the Most High and Holy Father. In other words, my job, and I accept the assignment, is to listen to everything you tell me to do. And everything you tell me to do, I will do. So that boring of the ear is figurative of Christ saying, as a good servant, I listen to the commands, to the directions, and to the obligations that my master puts upon me. And it is my desire and delight to fulfill them. So Christ is also saying, like that servant who said, Master, I don't really want to leave. I love you and I love my family and the farm and so on. Christ is saying, Father, I love you and I wish to do your bidding forever. What's interesting about that is Christ is our great high priest who intercedes for us forever, who ministers for us forever. He will never cease to be a servant who serves his people. Precious truth.